All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. This one is going to hit close to home for a lot of you, especially if you're parents.
Uh-oh. Sounds like we're about to tackle some seriously heavy stuff.
You could say that. Or you could say we're about to have some fun with it. We're diving into the wonderful world of parenting teenagers.
Ah, yes. Teenagers. The masters of eye-rolling and dramatic sighing.
You're telling me. I swear, my vocabulary has been reduced to clean your room. And don't you have homework?
Well, get ready to expand that vocabulary because the source material we're looking at today compares parenting teenagers to something pretty unexpected.
You're right about that. It's not your typical parenting advice book. We're actually looking at a podcast episode where the hosts compare raising teenagers to hostage negotiation.
Hostage negotiation, that's a new
I
one.
know, right? But the more you think about it, the more it kind of makes sense. The constant standoffs, the intense emotions, the feeling of being completely outmatched.
Okay, I see where they're going with this. And from a psychological perspective, it's not a totally crazy comparison. Teenagers are going through a developmental stage where their brains are literally rewiring, the hormones are going haywire, and they're desperately craving independence.
So you're saying there's actually a scientific reason why negotiating with a teenager can feel like you're facing off against a volatile hostage taker.
It's not just about the surface level humor here. There are real parallels between the two situations. Think about it. Hostage negotiators and parents of teenagers both have to learn how to de-escalate situations, read between the lines, and figure out what's driving the behavior.
Okay, so instead of yelling, "because I said so," which, let's be honest, is probably our go-to move, more often than we'd like to admit, we should be trying to understand what's really going on with our teen.
Exactly. And the podcast even brings in this super skilled FBI negotiator, Abby Mullen, from Mike Omer's thriller novels.
Oh yeah, Abby Mullen. She's like the ultimate cool head in those high-pressure hostage situations. I mean, I can barely keep my cool when my kid leaves their dirty socks on the floor.
Exactly. And in the podcast, they use her as the benchmark for how to handle those intense high-stakes situations.
Like trying to get your teenager to put down their phone for dinner.
Or convincing them that doing their laundry is not a form of cruel and unusual punishment.
Right. I mean, one of the hosts, Sarah, jokes about how telling her daughter to drop the phone is basically the parenting equivalent of drop the weapon.
Which, when you think about it, both involve someone who feels threatened and is reacting defensively.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So maybe instead of immediately resorting to parental force, we should try to approach these conflicts with a little more empathy and understanding.
Exactly. Because remember, they're not just trying to push our buttons. They're trying to figure out who they are, what they believe in, and where they fit into the world.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually do that? I mean, how can we, as parents, actually tap into those Abby Mullen level negotiation skills?
Well, that's what we're going to explore.
Bring on the negotiation tactics.
One of Abby's signature moves is active listening.
Active listening. So like really, really listening, not just pretending to while we're mentally planning our grocery list.
You got it. It's about truly hearing what the other person is saying, even if you don't agree with it, even if it makes you want to tear your hair out. It's about trying to understand their perspective, their fears, their needs.
So instead of shutting down the conversation or dismissing our teens' feelings, we should actually try to see things from their side, even if it seems totally bonkers to us.
Exactly. Remember, what seems ridiculous to us might be a monumental deal to them.
Okay, I can see how that could help de-escalate a situation. It's like saying, "Hey, I hear you, I get it, but let's talk about this."
Exactly. It's about validating their feelings, even if we don't condone their behavior. We're showing them respect and a willingness to listen, and that can make a world of difference. But let's be real, sometimes it feels like our teenagers are speaking a completely different language.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like they've suddenly developed their own secret code. And the worst part is they're fluent in it, and we're just fumbling around trying to decipher it.
Well, there's actually a reason for that. You see, teens are developing their abstract reasoning and argumentation skills.
Ah, so that's why they can suddenly turn into these, like, master debaters. It's like they can find a loophole in any rule you try to set.
Exactly. The podcast host, Mike, hilariously refers to them as tiny lawyers.
Oh my gosh, the tiny lawyer thing is so spot on. It's like they could give Johnny Cochran a run for his money.
Exactly. They're testing boundaries, challenging assumptions, and basically flexing their mental muscles.
So what you're saying is, instead of getting annoyed by their constant questioning and arguing, we should see it as a sign that their brains are developing.
Precisely. And it's a good thing. Instead of shutting down the conversation, we can actually use it as an opportunity to teach them critical thinking skills.
Okay, that's an interesting way to look at it. So it's not about winning the argument, it's about using these everyday conflicts as teachable moments.
You got it. And, this ties back to the hostage negotiation analogy. Abby Mullen doesn't just go in with guns blazing. She takes the time to understand the hostage takers' motivations, their grievances, their demands.
So we should be doing the same thing with our teenagers. Like, instead of just saying no to everything, we should try to understand why they're asking and see if there's room for compromise.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot between setting boundaries and giving them a sense of autonomy. Remember, they crave independence.
Right, and that makes sense. In the podcast, Mike jokes about how terrorists don't ask for money to buy V-Bucks or permission to film TikTok dances in their hostage videos.
It's funny, right? But it also highlights those generational differences and the unique challenges of parenting in the digital age.
Yeah, definitely. Which actually makes me wonder, how do we apply those negotiation skills to navigate the online world with our teens? It's like a whole other level of hostage negotiation.
Oh, absolutely. And just like in a real hostage situation, the key is communication. We need to talk to our teens about online safety, digital citizenship, the potential risks of social media.
But how do you even start that conversation? I mean, most teenagers just roll their eyes at the mere mention of screen time limits.
Right, I hear you. It's definitely a challenge. But again, it comes back to those negotiation tactics. Instead of lecturing or imposing strict rules, try having an open, honest conversation. Ask them about their favorite apps, what they like to do online, what their concerns are.
So it's about building trust and showing them that we're not trying to control them, but that we do care about their well-being.
Exactly. And remember, we don't have to have all the answers. We can learn alongside our teens, explore the digital world together, and set those boundaries collaboratively.
Okay, that makes me feel a bit more confident about navigating the whole online thing.
Hmm.
But let's be real. Sometimes teenagers are just plain dramatic. In the podcast, Sarah talks about how her daughter slams doors like she's auditioning for a Broadway musical.
The theatrics of teenagehood, it can be exhausting, but also kind of entertaining, right?
Oh, it definitely keeps things interesting.
Yeah.
But seriously, is there a way to apply those hostage negotiation skills to those over-the-top emotional outbursts?
Absolutely. Remember, those dramatic reactions are often a sign that their emotions are running high. Their brains are still developing the ability to regulate their emotional responses.
So instead of getting caught up in the drama, we should try to see it as a sign that they're struggling to cope with their feelings.
Precisely. And just like Abby Mullen wouldn't yell back at an agitated hostage taker, we need to stay calm and collected when our teen is melting down.
Okay, so deep breaths, keep a cool head, try to see their perspective. But what about when they say things like, I hate you or you've ruined my life? How do you negotiate with that?
Those are tough, for sure. But remember, those words are often coming from hurt and frustration. They don't literally hate us, even though it might feel like it in that moment.
So how do we respond? Do we ignore it? Call them out? What's the Abby Mullen playbook for those heart-wrenching pronouncements?
Well, the first step is to not take it personally. It's hard, I know, but it's not about us. It's about them trying to express their big, messy emotions.
Okay, so don't react defensively. But what do we say? How do we acknowledge their feelings without caving to their demands?
Try something like, I understand you're angry right now, and it's okay to feel that way, but I love you and I'm here for you when you're ready to talk. Validate their emotions without condoning the behavior.
So it's like setting a boundary, but also leaving the door open for communication.
You got it. And another tactic Abby Mullen uses is mirroring. It's reflecting back the other person's language and emotions, showing you're listening and understanding.
So if our teenager says, you're being so unfair, you never let me do anything, we could say, I hear that you're feeling frustrated because you want more freedom.
Exactly. It shows you're paying attention, trying to see their perspective.
Okay, I can see how that could be really powerful in de-escalating a situation. It's like saying, I get it, I'm with you, let's work through this together.
Exactly. And, sometimes just acknowledging the absurdity of the situation can diffuse the tension.
Right, like in the podcast when Mike says, if you can survive a teenager yelling, I hate you, because you didn't buy them concert tickets, you can survive anything. It's like, literally you just have to laugh at the ridiculousness of it all.
Exactly. Humor is a powerful coping mechanism for both parents and teenagers. It can help us keep things in perspective and remember that, as challenging as these years can be, they're also filled with hilarious moments.
Exactly. Humor is a powerful coping mechanism for both parents and teenagers. It can help us keep things in perspective and remember that, as challenging as these years can be, they're also filled with hilarious moments.
Okay, so it's not about pretending that parenting teenagers is easy or always fun. It's about finding those moments of lightness and connection amidst the chaos, right?
Absolutely. And, this whole hostage negotiation analogy is a great reminder that parenting teens is a high-stakes game, but it's not one we have to face alone. We can learn from the experts, support each other, and find those moments of humor and grace.
Okay, I'm feeling a little more equipped to handle those hostage situations, parenting challenges. But I'm curious, what are some specific skills we can learn from pro negotiators to help us in our everyday interactions with our teens?
Well, one of the most important is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence.
Yeah,
So, like, being aware of our own emotions and the emotions of others.
exactly. And being able to manage those emotions effectively.
So it's not just about understanding our teenagers' feelings,
Yeah.
it's also about being mindful of our own reactions.
Exactly, because let's face it, sometimes we're the ones escalating the situation. We get triggered by their behavior, we lose our cool, and things spiral out of control.
Okay, yeah, I've definitely been guilty of that a time or two. So how can we develop that emotional intelligence?
It starts with self-awareness, recognizing our own emotional triggers.
You mean like those things that really push our buttons
Precisely. If we know we get frustrated when our teen doesn't listen, we can try to be more mindful of that feeling and not react so impulsively.
and try to understand why those things trigger us?
Exactly. What are those underlying beliefs or expectations that are driving our reactions?
I think sometimes we have these unspoken expectations about how our teens should behave. And when they don't, we get upset.
Right. And it's important to remember, teenagers are not mini adults. They're still figuring things out, making mistakes, learning.
So we need to give them some grace, give them space to mess up and support them in learning from those mistakes.
Exactly. And another important skill we can learn from negotiators is staying calm under pressure.
Okay, that one sounds pretty challenging. Teenagers are practically experts at pushing our buttons and creating those high-pressure situations.
Oh, they are. But just like Abby Mullen doesn't lose her cool when a hostage taker threatens her, we need to learn how to regulate our own emotions. Stay focused, make rational decisions.
So deep breaths, counting to 10, whatever it takes to keep from completely losing it.
Exactly. And there are practical techniques to manage stress levels. Exercise, meditation, spending time in nature, all helpful for staying grounded and centered.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these hostage negotiation skills are about more than just extreme situations. They're about equipping us with the tools to navigate the everyday challenges of parenting.
Exactly. It's about building resilience, developing empathy, strengthening our communication skills.
All right, I'm feeling a bit more empowered to tackle those parenting hostage situations.
Yeah.
Parenting challenges. What about the teenagers themselves? Can they learn anything from these tactics?
Absolutely. Teaching our teenagers negotiation skills might be one of the most valuable things we can do for them.
So we should teach our teenagers how to negotiate with us. That sounds a little terrifying.
I know it sounds counterintuitive, but trust me. When teens learn how to negotiate effectively, they develop crucial life skills. Skills that will serve them well in all areas of their lives.
Like what? Give me some examples.
They learn to communicate their needs and wants clearly and assertively. They learn to listen to others, understand different perspectives, and find solutions that work for everyone involved.
So it's about teaching them to advocate for themselves while respecting the needs of others.
Exactly. Negotiation skills are essential for everything. Resolving conflicts with friends, family, even things like negotiating salaries or job offers later on.
Okay, I can see how giving them these skills could make our lives easier in the long run. But how do we teach them? Where do we even begin?
Well, one way is to model those skills ourselves. When we approach conflicts with our teens calmly, respectfully, collaboratively, they learn by watching us.
So it's not just about telling them how to negotiate, it's about showing them how it's done.
Exactly. And we can create opportunities for them to practice in safe environments, family meetings where everyone gets to voice their opinions and make decisions together.
Okay, that's a great idea. Like a mini United Nations in our living room. But what about those times when our teens are being totally unreasonable?
Mm,
How do you negotiate with someone not willing to come to the table?
that's a tough one. And sometimes, honestly, the best strategy is to walk away. Give them some space to cool down.
So it's like a strategic retreat. We're not giving up, just coming back to the negotiation when everyone's calmer.
Precisely. And sometimes the best way to negotiate with a teenager is not to negotiate at all. Sometimes we need to set firm boundaries and stick to them.
Wait, so you're saying it's okay to just say no and mean it?
Absolutely. We're the parents. Ultimately, we're responsible for their safety and well-being. There are things that are non-negotiable, their health, their education, their respect for others.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's about finding that balance between being open to negotiation and setting clear boundaries.
Exactly. It's about knowing when to hold firm and when to be flexible. It's a delicate dance, but with practice and patience, we can navigate those tricky teenage years with a bit more grace and ease.
This whole hostage negotiation analogy has been surprisingly insightful.
Right, and who knew that a thriller novel series could offer valuable parenting advice?
Well, deep divers, we've reached the end of our deep dives into the world of parenting teenagers. We've laughed, we've learned, and hopefully you gained some valuable insights you can use.
Even though the teenage years can be challenging, they're an amazing opportunity to connect with our kids and support them through this exciting, sometimes tumultuous stage of life.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Reach out to other parents, find support groups, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
And above all, find those moments of joy and connection amidst the chaos. The teenage years are fleeting, so cherish them while you can.
Beautifully said. Now, we want to hear from you. What's your most hilarious parenting hostage negotiation story? Share it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more deep dives into unexpected topics. Until next time, happy negotiating.